The two biggest things holding you back from enhancing the quality of your life are the following, and identify where you are. Group number one is you don't know what to do. I want to, again, enhance my life. I want to get this. I want success. What do I do? That's the number one thing blocking you, is that you just don't know the steps to take. My guess, though, is that might just be a few of you. The majority of people are in group number two, where you know exactly what to do, but you aren't doing it. Just think of New Year's resolutions. Everyone knows a couple steps they could take to improve their life. That's why they have resolutions. Even in the mainstream, they have a couple steps. Hey, this year I'm committing to doing this, and I'm going to do this challenge and this. Well, that means that you know if you actually stuck to that, it would improve. But what happens? A week passes, maybe not even a week. A day passes, an hour passes. You're like, well, screw this. But usually the majority of people fall off. So it's this big sign that, especially nowadays with social media, the internet, YouTube, there is a how-to video for everything. Literally everything, including the weirdest, creepiest, most underground things. How to, and you're going to see a bunch of tutorials. So the steps are out there. If you can't find the how-to steps, might not be all of them, of course. There are levels to this, but at least one or two that if you just stuck to them over a period of time, your life would improve. Hey, welcome to YouTube. It's on there. So the biggest problem that we all face now is that we have all this information, too much information, yet we just can't get ourselves to do it. And then the extra downside with that is you feel even worse. It's actually easier to want to improve something, but you just don't know how to do it, than to know how to do it, and you're just not doing it. Because how pathetic does that feel? The self-attack even amplifies. It's not only, oh, you suck, it's you suck and you even know what to do to get better and you're not doing it. You double suck. It's just a terrible reality to live in. Now, this brings me to the foundation of what I teach. You might have heard me talk about it, where if you think of yourself as a computer, there's the hardware and there's the software. For anyone who's younger, there's your phone and there's the apps. And what we do is, I am the hardware, I am the phone, I'm going to download all of the apps that are going to improve me. I'm going to download the confidence app, I'm going to download the business app, the marketing app, the sales app, the health app, the gym app, the mindset app, the social communication skills app, all these apps. We're just downloading. Now you might reach a point where you're even like, well, look, I got all these apps, but they're just not quite working for me. That's the whole, I know what to do, but I'm not doing it. Why is it not working on my phone? And you might see different apps or software installed on other people's phones, and it's working fine. Why is it that that person, they saw the same content, they read the same book, and look at them now? I read that book too. Why not me? What's wrong? Oh, I'm self-sabotaging a little bit. So then what do? You look for the self-sabotage app, and you're just downloading. This is why also the sad behind the scenes of most people nowadays, and I know this because I coach a lot of clients, and I don't just talk to the fronts, I see what's going on. The average person during their free time is, you come home from work, and you're either going to binge TV movies, or for any of you in self-help, you're going to binge self-help videos on YouTube, on social media. So you're scrolling YouTube, video. Oh, what's the latest thing with that? Oh, another video. Click. Scrolling through your TikTok, your Instagram, and you're getting little epiphany highs. What's an epiphany high? When you heard something that you hear something you just didn't hear before. That's a good point. You know the meme where it's like, mind blown. You get little bits of that. Nothing actually changes in your life. You just get a little high, a little aha moment. Next, aha, next. And that's it. And in between that time, people take breaks where they pleasure themselves. For real. Could be through pornography, you name it. You pleasure yourself, and then to recharge, more YouTube, Julien, pleasure, Julien, pleasure. No, but that's actually the behind the scenes of most people. And then you get some extra pleasure from whatever junk food you eat, and then you go to bed. That's the reality. I kind of make it comic here, but it is true. Free time, that's pretty much what goes on. Oh, and video games too. Forgot to mention that one. Now, the reason, by the way, watching self-help videos turns into procrastination for a lot of people is because you feel better about procrastinating. If you watch a Netflix show, you just know nothing productive's coming of it. But if you watch an educational video, even if you don't apply it, you just get your little epiphany highs. Technically, it produces the same as the Netflix show, but you feel better about your procrastination because at least I'm learning something. But technically, it's still procrastination. What I always say is, hey, if you're not going to take action on the content, if you're not going to actually put it to play and put it into your life, Netflix is much better for entertainment. If you're actually going to put action, yes, learn, but otherwise, no, just don't distract yourself with learning. If you're going to distract yourself, go all the way. Now, here's the problem. Why doesn't it work? It's because the solution is not in the software. It's not in the apps. Doesn't matter how many you install, it's not going to work if there's a virus on the hardware. And that's the foundation of this work. You must realize that you, yourself as the hardware, there is a virus that has been programmed into you through conditioning. We all have it. You are not immune to it. I'm the only one without a virus. No, we all do. And if you're that person where you're taking the same content as others, but it just doesn't work, you just can't apply it, it's because you have a very strong virus. And to get rid of a virus, it's not in the apps, it's in running the antivirus. And this is something that few people do. We rarely stop and run that antivirus. Wait a minute, what's going on here? And it's two very different approaches. And once you get this, you'll be able to filter a lot of self-help and even spiritual advice through it. One approach or paradigm is the what now paradigm. I have a problem, what now? Right? Hey, I'm self-sabotaging, what now? I'm anxious, what now? I have low self-esteem, what now? What now? What now? What now? And it is better than nothing. It's better than, oh, low self-esteem. You just take it. Better than nothing, but it never truly gets to the cause. That's the what now? What's the next app? What's the next bit of software to install? The other paradigm, and if you've been in self-help a while, most likely you're in the what now, and it's time to graduate to the why paradigm. Instead of, oh, I'm self-sabotaging, I'm procrastinating, what now? What if you just simply change the approach to why? Why am I doing this? Where did this come from? I don't feel good enough. What now? Why don't I feel good enough? I have anxiety. What now? Why do I have anxiety? Instead of what now, ask yourself why. This simple little change alone, game changer. It moves you to that paradigm. And the why is, why do I act this way? Is there a virus? Where does this virus come from? And what can I do about it? Now, where does this virus come from? This goes to the next level. There are three things that keep it alive. And this is another model to just cement in your mind. This is you. You, and most people, live in an invisible prison. You think you have free will, but you don't really. You have free will to the extent that your subconscious allows you to. Meaning, right now, do you have free will to look to your right? Yes, no. Try it. Can you do it? Look at that. Look to your left. Can you do it? Oh, look, free will. But here's the thing. You have free will within this prison, within your comfort zone. Oh, you have free will? Talk to some close friend. You can easily talk. Talk to a stranger. Where's your free will there? Anytime you act outside of this prison, I'm a little shy, but I have a couple friends I can talk with. Talk to a stranger out here, blocked. Hey, I want to be a little bit more successful than this. Take some action, blocked. Hey, there's this great software I installed that teaches me this. Let me take action, blocked. So you're free within the invisible prison. Socially, you can just audit around who you feel that stifled energy. There are some people in your life, you're not stifled at all. You're very confident. You're very charismatic. Everyone has that environment. Even the most shy, introverted person, it could be playing a video game with the headset on. They have charisma in that headset. Yet around certain people, you just can't access it. Right? You can also audit the past few years. What's the average you've stayed at when it comes to your health? What do you keep being pulled back to? I'm getting a little bit healthier, a little bit healthier. Time for a cheat meal, pulled back. Money-wise, same thing. What's been the average in your bank account? Friendship, relationship situations, what's been the average there? So we're all in this prison. And once more, you hear comfort zone, it's not necessarily comfortable, it's known. And for most people, this prison is a living hell. And once more, this is that virus, keeps you stuck. Now, what do people do? They try to fight it with the what now approach. So think of it as, here's the prison, and around the prison, there are the guards of self-sabotage, patrolling. They're looking out, don't escape, stay in the prison, stay there. As soon as you do, and you hit this point, you cross the wall, they get you. And it feels like this force just pulling you back. Now, what now is, there's the force pulling me back. What do I do? Discipline, work ethic. You got this, just hustle it out. Fight the guards directly. It's the direct approach. Here's this guard of self-sabotage, fight the guard. And you can, to be clear, perfect your skill of fighting the guards. But eventually, they'll win. You can never, ever beat the guards of self-sabotage if you fight them directly. You are just too weak. You can delay the inevitable. That is it. So, shifting away from the what now, why? There's a guard. What now? Turn on the lightsaber. No. Why is there a guard? What is keeping this guard and this invisible prison alive? That's the approach. And there are actually three things that keep it alive. Three generators, if you will. The first is core beliefs. Different core beliefs that you have, and we're going to go deeper on this. And a lot of self-sabotage is you staying congruent, aligned to those core beliefs. Approach number two here, the generator is your core identity, who you consider yourself to be. There's who you want to be and who you consider yourself to be. And a lot of self-sabotage is staying aligned to that. And lastly, past trauma. Those are the three generators. Past trauma. Traumatic experiences that keep you stuck. So these three generators are at the cause of this prison. If you want to get rid of the guards, you can't fight them directly. You got to identify what are the core beliefs that are running me and turn the generator off through letting go. You got to identify what is the core identity that is running me, turn that generator off. And lastly, what is the trauma inside of me that I must let go of and process and heal from? And when you do, you turn that one off. And when the three generators are off, you are free. The whole prison deactivates and the guards disappear. That's the approach. And you realize how the majority of advice out there is fighting the guards. And technically, you could argue that's not even success advice. That is anti-self-sabotage advice. It's coping advice. And there's a big difference between coping, hey, look how good I am at fighting these guards, versus healing, getting rid of the guards completely. Really fast.
What's an example of fighting the guards?
Hustle, discipline, accountability. Right? Like, how do you motivate yourself? Why do you need to motivate yourself? Anything you're doing to motivate yourself is coping. It's fighting the guards. It means there's a part of you that's not motivated, pulling you away, and then we try to compensate, to cope with it. Versus, why am I not just inspired by default? right? Do any of you have to motivate yourself to play a video game? Look how disciplined I am. I really was resisting playing this game. No, you're just naturally inspired to do it. This also proves a point where if you look at people who play hours and hours and hours of video games, mainstream label is, what is that? Wasting your life away. But there's an argument to be made, which is, hey, that's a lot of work. It is. You're waking up, you're locked in. You're not slacking off. You are locked in, you're perfecting your skills, you're dedicating a ton of energy, time, focus at playing this game for hours and hours and hours. You even cut into your sleep to play the game. So you already have the work ethic. That's crazy work ethic. The problem is it's only in the video game. And if you try to transfer that in the real life, resistance, self-sabotage. And then you try to discipline yourself. As opposed to, wait a minute, why am I not like this in other aspects, in other areas? What's blocking me from accessing this in other areas? Understanding this is a famous saying, but it is the most accurate one. You realize that the quality of your life has much less to do with what you add to it and more to do with what you remove from it. If you haven't heard this before, write it down because it's the foundation. We're so used to adding, gathering, accumulating. Even if you think of just knowledge, that's what most people do. They're downloading all this knowledge. More content, more. Not about adding more, it's about removing that virus. And what you'll see is just with a little bit of content, once you remove the virus, you'll get much more results than a lot of content with a virus. Now, here's another example that illustrates coping versus actually healing. Say you have a wound, and it's a bad one. You're cut everywhere, your guts are hanging out, and the medics arrive, the ambulance arrives, you're on the street, right? You're just like, oh, my intestines, Private Ryan style, Saving Private Ryan. The ambulance arrives and say they patch you up. They're like, oh my God, we got to get this person to the hospital. So they patch you up, right? They put a Band-Aid and so on and so forth. They just tie it and like, there we go, it'll keep them together. That's coping. That's, I have self-sabotage, what do I do? Put a Band-Aid on it, tie it up. But what happens if you never go to the hospital? He's good now. You put it on him, you're screwed. And that's the thing. Coping does have its place, and it can be helpful in very terrible situations. But it's not the thing you want to rely on. The goal of coping is to keep you intact until you get to the hospital. But all of you have been ready for the hospital for a very long time. Most people have. And this is where, instead of, okay, I put the Band-Aid on it, I'm okay, what now? It's why. And you have to face it. You have to look down at the wound and start healing it. And let go of your resistance around acknowledging those wounds, because there are layers and layers of resistance. That's the approach. And once you heal it, it's an absolute game changer. And it's crazy how a lot of people feel this way. It shouldn't be this hard. You ever have that thought? It shouldn't be this hard, right? Why is it? Like I see some people just thriving. Why is it so hard for me? I even know more content and mindset and psychology than them. Why is it easier for them? Why is it so hard for me? And the truth is, it shouldn't. Now, the other side of people, they just accept the reality. Life is hard. You just got to toughen up. No. There is a reality, a paradigm where it is not hard. But you have to be willing to face that wound. You have to be willing to face the core beliefs, your core identity, and past trauma. And that is the scariest thing you can do. There's a label around inner work that says, inner work's the easy stuff. And I used to think that. For the first part of my whole journey, from 2006 to 2014, so a good 8 years, because that's how long I've been working myself, 2006. For the most part, I was in the very much what now mindset. I was the what now champ. And I got really good at fighting self-sabotage. It got me, but I was in the what now area. And anyone who talked about inner work, mindset, I always thought it was a cop-out because they were too scared to take action. That was the label. Oh, that's the easy way. Oh, just introspect or meditation. It's because they're too scared to take action. And there are some people like that, yes. But what I realized later on is that the action side, the what now side, that's the easy mode. Sure, it's not completely easy, but it's much easier to just face like, oh, I'm scared to say hi to someone. You just do it than to face the stuff that you've been fearing your entire life. In terms of my own story, as I mentioned, I started working on myself in 2006. Prior to that, I was the shyest person around. I say this, and it sounds a bit comical. You're like, huh, sure you were. Or maybe just a little bit more shy. No, I was a hard case, shy, and anxious person. I had so much anxiety. I had anxiety around my own family. Going down to have dinner with siblings and parents gave me social anxiety. That's how bad it was. There was no way I would ever see myself in front of a stage like this talking. I wouldn't even show up to an event like this in person. It'd be way too scary. Or if I did, I'd be sitting in the back in the corner, and after a few minutes, I'd run out because it'd be too intense. I needed the protection of seeing it on my computer or on the television. Now, I did have one avenue in which I could express myself, and that was music. Through playing guitar, I could express myself, but that was the only area where I actually felt free. In every other aspect of life, I felt held back, anxious, just couldn't talk. And I wanted to, but I couldn't. And you might have had that experience where, for me, I have a vivid memory. It was Christmas dinner with family, cousins, so on and so forth. And I was the quietest one there. And what do they do if you're the quietest one there? They call it out. Julien, why are you so quiet? You haven't said a word tonight. And what does that do? Does that help? No, it makes it worse. So say something. Go on, say something. And then there's all the pressure and all the eyes. Terrible. And that was the majority of my life. And I was very sad. I was quite depressed. I thought, well, this is as good as it gets. Okay. Then you hear mainstream advice saying, hey, the happiest days of your life, your childhood, it's downhill from there. I'm like, how is that possible? Can it get worse than this? It was a living hell, a living nightmare. I would wake up and I would look forward until I fell asleep that night. That was the reality I was in. Ultimately, escaping life. Can I just die yet? Can I just sleep forever? I used to actually fantasize of like, oh man, like when you wake up from having a cool dream, I wish I could just dream that my entire life and not live, not even face existence. And there wasn't much I could do about it. And I was like, I guess I just have to accept this. Then in 2006, I found out the whole self-improvement world, especially around confidence, social skills. And I realized, this is the biggest epiphany for me, I can do something about this. Meaning you can't control what happens to you during your childhood. You can't. You're at the mercy of your environment and the people around you, and that will condition you. There is nothing you can do about that. And some people are born into better situations than others. That's life. But the beauty that I realized in 2006 is that, hey, you can't control that, but you can control where you go from there. And not just that, later on I realized you can also unlearn all the toxic things that got programmed into you during that time. Meaning just because that was your childhood doesn't mean it's going to dictate the rest of your life. And that was mind-blowing to me. It was like, wait a minute, I am not just this leaf blowing in the wind, I can actually choose a direction. I can do something about this. I can be at the cause of my own life. I can actually live a life of my own design. And that was baffling. That gave me a ton of hope and power. There was a long journey ahead, but that was the biggest one. Then I started working on myself in the what now paradigm. I have anxiety, what now? So, hey, let's start practicing talking to more people, right? If you have anxiety, what's one thing you can do? Or social anxiety, talk to a lot of people. The same with your communication skills. You want to improve your communication skills? Talk to more people. You want the best communication skills in the world? Talk to more people than the average person would in their entire life. That's a big part of it. You need a lot of experience, a lot of reference experiences. And you have control over that. Audit the average person. How many new people do they meet and talk to over the course of their life? And how can you compress that in a shorter period of time? And I doubled down on that. And I got quite good, despite the self-sabotage. I got really good at fighting self-sabotage. I was Anakin Skywalker fighting the guards, being modest. And it allowed me to accomplish a good amount of success. I'm originally from Switzerland. It allowed me to conquer my anxiety, to move to America, move to Los Angeles, to help others with this, to tour around with this. And I lived from, in hindsight at the time, my ego's perspective, my ideal life when it comes to my ego. I accomplished all that. Everyone has that, those kind of petty desires, those cravings. I got all of it. Everything I thought would ever fulfill me and make me happy, I got in spite of the self-sabotage. And what I realized is that it didn't work. For real. From my perspective at the time, early 20s, I had all the relationships I wanted. I was speaking in front of big crowds like this, traveling around the world, multiple world tours, making a good amount of money, more than I could spend, amazing relationships, friendships, experiences. I mean, what more, especially early 20s, could you want from life? Tell me, is there anything more? Relationships, check. Friendships, check. Money, check. Travel, check. Lifestyle, check. I was young, health, check. What else? Well, yeah, fulfillment is one, for sure, not fulfilled at all. But it drove me crazy. I'm sitting there, I'm like, I have everything. I can't actually think of anything else that I need. But I don't feel happy. I don't feel fulfilled. I still feel the pull of self-sabotage, that invisible hand pulling me back to what I was like before 2006. And this is 8 years later. 8 years. And what did I do? Well, if I can't think of anything new, maybe I just need more of it. That was my conclusion. I just need more relationships, more friendships, more approval, more validation, more travel, more. And I doubled down on it. And it took over. You'll see this. In my coaching, I put desire above courage. Courage is you playing to win, taking some action. And we'll talk about this. Desire is the land of the ego. And that's usually where your ego will swoop in on these authentic things and steer you away, get you to sell out. Where guess what? When I started coaching, 2010, my intention was, look, I came from such a dark place. The past 4 years, I made a lot of progress. Here's some things you can learn. And the only goal in mind was to help you. But 2014, 4 years later, my goal was still to some extent to help you, but more importantly, it was to help me by getting validation and crazy reactions. It was quite scary in hindsight, where if I put a video out in the past, I was like, is this helpful? Yes, okay, post. Then it was, how many views is this video going to get? Is it shocking enough? Is there enough validation? What's it going to say about me? Post. Because I was doubling down on that, thinking that I just needed more. I need more people to react. And I interpreted for myself, not even approval, disapproval, but strong emotional reactions to me equals love. So the more you react, if you love it or hate it, that's love to me. That's acknowledging my existence. That's noticing me, making my ego feel significant. Make sense? Then it all came together in 2014, where the self-sabotage that I was fighting finally got me. And that's the thing. You can temporarily fight those guards, but eventually they will get you. There's always a price to pay. It could be even a year, 2, 3 years from now, but they will get you. And by the way, for a lot of entrepreneurs, they get you when it comes to health. You just battle and discipline and hustle, and then you start having health issues. Due to all the stress and all that discipline and hustle, I see it like crazy. So it came and finally got me. So it didn't work in the long run. It didn't work in the short run because I wasn't even enjoying the results I was getting. And that's something to realize for yourself. If whatever you're accomplishing, whatever result you're getting, if you're not enjoying it, that's not a result, is it? No. So you're chasing phantoms in a way. And then everything came together and imploded. And I lost it all. And I went from this egoic high of chasing more to having everything ripped away. And it resulted in a worldwide scandal where half the world, or the majority of the world, absolutely hated me. You might know this if you've been following me for a while, you might not. But if you go on Google and you search the most hated man in the world, my picture will appear. It will. Times Magazine's most hated man in the world. I had to publicly go on CNN and apologize. Now, the reason it exploded, there are many. I won't go into extreme detail, but ultimately, I pushed shock humor to such an extent that it blurred the lines where it was hard to tell that it was shock humor. People took it out of context, it exploded, and people thought that's what I actually taught when it wasn't. In hindsight, though, there's a lot of things I would have said or explained differently. There are many things I would have changed. I've done a ton of work since then. I like to think I'm very different in the past almost 10 years now, but that's what happened at the time. And for me at the time, being someone who was so ego-driven, everything you're trying to find yourself in, the money, the approval, so on and so forth, imploding, getting stripped away, it kills you. Because that's who you are. If all you are your money and your money's gone, who are you? If everything that you are is in the approval and validation and that's gone and it turns into disapproval, who are you? Your entire identity gets ripped away. And it felt like I was dying. And it was the most traumatic yet and dark and depressing period of my life, but it also led in the long run, and I'll talk about this, to the greatest realizations, which is what I teach and the message that I put out here today. But it was a crazy experience. For those of you who fear getting rejected or fear disapproval, I'm literally one of the top experts in the world due to that experience. Very few people have been disapproved of by the majority of the world. Very few. And there's a lot of insights that I got from that I then spread in my teachings here. But that was the first part of my journey. And ultimately, that was life putting a wall in the way of the what now paradigm. Saying, no, you can't keep going down this road. And I was in a dark spot back then too. I was so unfulfilled, and at the surface, it all seemed great, but I just kept doubling down and doubling down. So it took it all away. The few months after that, downward fall, and it led me to a point. It was February 2015 in Miami, where I was late at night looking out into the ocean and almost hallucinated walking out into the ocean and just ending it. And I was that close to doing it. And it was at that point, that moment, that everything fucking changed. It was at that moment where I was ultimately with the final decision, which is either everything imploding is going to take you with it, or you have to let go. Those were the two options. Keep hanging on and die, or let go. And fortunately, and looking even back at, there's books that talk about this. Ron Johnson, for example, so you've been publicly shamed. A lot of people go through similar situations. They do get dragged down and they end it. It's terrible. And fortunately, I didn't. And I had the first experience of just letting go of all of that. In the spiritual world, they'll call it a Satori experience, where I finally just was just literally overwhelmed with just like complete presence, fulfillment, abundance, bliss, whatever you want to call it. And I finally got what I was after my entire life. Now, it didn't last, because then all this subconscious programming takes over again, but it showed me the path. It showed me the way. And it showed me that, hey, there's another strategy, another approach. And it gave me hope. And then I doubled down on that, trying to find a way to dive into it, to reconnect with that, to make it more permanent, to teach it. And then it kept evolving since early 2015, late 2014, all the way until now. And this is what ultimately became transformation mastery, which is what I teach here. The whole teachings came from that. Now, I'm sharing this because for me, my ego was so stubborn, it took a worldwide scandal to let go and look for another way. Does this mean for you, you need to wait for your own scandal to look for another way? Yes? No. Yes. And this is where my How to Get in a Scandal course comes into play. No, of course not. No. But for some people, and they actually talk about this in AA, they say, hey, say you have someone who you know who's an alcoholic, and you ask someone about that, they're like, the best thing you can hope for is that they hit rock bottom fast, and it's not too bad. But they have to hit rock bottom for that opening. And for anyone going through adversity, hard times in life, always look for the opening because it's there. I personally like to view it like it's life's helping hand, showing you the right direction even though you don't know it yet. I would have never seen the opening to this type of work. Like I said, I was so blocked off if it weren't for that. So keep it in mind. There is always a gift in the hardest times of your life if you are open enough to see it. Okay? Now, the other big advantage, and I do want to mention this too, the other big advantage I got from the social skills side of things, the talking to a lot of people, is the same thing that I applied to coaching, and it's the same thing that bleeds into my content and teachings now. Meaning, by talking to a lot of people, you develop a very deep sense, if you do it right, of empathy. Meaning you can easily get a feel for what other people are feeling, thinking, what's going on in their mind. For any of you who have worked on your social skills, you probably know what I'm talking about. You almost develop a spider sense where you can almost predict different reactions and what's actually going on inside. You are just attuned. I fortunately developed that through talking to a lot of people. I then transfer that when it comes to coaching, meaning every single person I coached was like someone I was talking to for the first time. And the same skill applied where I could see into how they're thinking, the baggage they're carrying, the worries, the things they care about, the things that run them. And it's like seen into the matrix of someone. And with every single client that I coached, it's more data that gets added to that repertoire that allows you to analyze it. And this is what I apply to this day when I coach people. If you've seen the videos where I break people, like break them down here in front, do the coaching demonstrations, that is the skill at play. Combine that skill with what I realized then and the whole letting go side of things, and that's where you really get powerful, powerful change. But that's my story. That's what I went through. And I rebuilt everything from there, changed the approach to my teachings, doubled down on what I realized then, doubled down on letting go, and the results my clients have gotten since have been exponentially better than any result prior to that. The results I've gotten since myself, even in the year, 2 years after that experience, were better than the previous 8 years. Now back to you. You don't need a scandal. You don't need to hit rock bottom. You already have enough experiences that show you that the strategy is flawed in your life. You just have to identify them. Look back at your life, at all those things you thought would change everything and didn't. Those things where it just didn't work. The example I've given for years, it applies less now, but back in the day, when every new iPhone was different, people were excited about it. Not anymore, but back then, yes. And whenever a new phone came out, there was hype months leading up to it. And the first people who got it, it was just like insane. You felt enhanced. And I was one of those people who looked forward to it. I would go to the Apple store, I'd show up, and they would even let you open the box. They wouldn't do it for you. Like, would you like to do it, sir? I'm like, yes, I would. And as soon as a new phone was announced, you're so excited, you finally get the new phone, and the first few days, couple weeks, few weeks, you are treating it like precious gold, right? And you want to have that experience? Like you just take out the box, you're like, oh, it's so fragile and beautiful and precious. And then after a period of time, what happens? You just throw it on the floor. This old thing, it lost all its glamour. And then you're looking forward to the next phone. And then the same thing happens with the next phone. You look forward to the next one, and that's the cycle. That's the same cycle that applies in so many areas of our life. When I get this, when I get this, when I get this, you get this, you get a little high, meh, next thing, next thing, next thing. So you have enough experience to see, hey, it's not going to work. If over the course of your life, all those years alive, all those little things you can collect, and the bigger the list, the better, the more you realize all of this didn't work, maybe the strategy is flawed. And the answer isn't more. Don't fall into the same trap that I fell into. I just got to double down. I guess it's just more. No. What you're after, the approach is different. The strategy is different. Take the hit sooner than later. Don't let your ego pimp you out and convince you that what you're after is just out of reach. Just a little bit more. I get what Julien's saying, but I just need to take a little bit more action towards it. Nothing out there will truly fulfill you, and the self-sabotage will still be there, and you will find your way back to what you know. You hear so many stories. The mainstream story is the lottery winner who spends it all, pulled back. But even in the self-help world, and this also would really frustrate me, is prior to 2014, I'd be traveling around, I'd coach someone, travel, and I'd come back to the city maybe 6 months, a year later, and I'd see some of the same people. And some maintained the change for a bit, some lost it. And those who maintained it for a bit, later on, would lose it too. They'd still make progress, but it just wasn't truly permanent. It wouldn't truly stick. And it frustrated me. I'm like, what's going on? But they were also subject to that same force that just pulls you back. And if you stop doing the coping, it gets you. The most mainstream self-help example of this is social anxiety challenges. Hey, I'm anxious, so I'm going to do a bunch of challenges. I'm going to desensitize myself. That's coping. That doesn't get to the cause. Does it help? Sure. It's like putting the Band-Aid. But what happens when you stop doing your challenges? Back to where you belong. So you're always dependent on those challenges. You become addicted and dependent on the coping mechanisms. And having to do social anxiety challenges to feel loose and to feel confident, having to build momentum to feel confident, is no different than having to drink to feel confident. It's just a different way to cope. I don't know if you've noticed, but even coming up here on stage, I'm just quietly standing at the back. I don't need to build momentum. You don't see me like, okay, warm up the voice, hey, talk to people, joke, 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 hey, 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 let me walk the crowd a little bit, okay, I'm in the mood now. I don't need to do that. I just come up and I'm like, hey, this is me. Because I removed the training wheels, the coping. I don't need it. If you need to do that, that's a sign letting go needs to happen. You're still in the what now paradigm. You need to move to the healing paradigm. Now, going deeper on this, let's dive into this why paradigm. Why do I have this virus? What's going on? And this is where you must rewind back to conditioning and your childhood. Where if you think of you coming into the world as a child, you come into a society. You come in, there's infrastructure, societal structure, there's rules, there's guidelines, there's traditions, and you come in and you know nothing of that. And you have to quickly figure out how this world works, what are all the rules, so you can function in society and function in the world, right? So that's the first key thing to understand. You got to learn the guidelines of life. Number two, the way that we tend to be taught these guidelines is through punishment and reward. As a kid, you're out having dinner in a restaurant, you just start screaming really, really loud, disrupting the environment. What are your parents going to tell you? Or whoever is raising you? Hey, please be quiet. Now, the intention can be good. Hey, if I don't tell my child to be quiet now when they're disrupting the whole restaurant, what's going to stop them from doing this again when they're older and alienating certain people or opportunities from their life, right? So I'm teaching them the rules so they know, hey, in this environment, it's not appropriate to scream. So if you do well with the rules, you're rewarded. Good child. And if not, you get punished. Bad. You're grounded. Go to your room. So that's the second point. The third is that as a kid, you have a very limited perception when it comes to the world. You don't think in terms of how big the world is. You don't see the world through the eyes that you see it now, through adult eyes. You can misinterpret things. So even a parent saying, hey, be quiet, in your mind as a kid, you could interpret it as, be quiet! And you could also interpret it as, oh, they don't love me right now. Now, is that true? Not necessarily, but you might believe it is from this limited child perspective. And not just that, but as a kid, you depend on them for your survival. So suddenly, a situation from an external perspective that doesn't necessarily seem that bad, from your child perspective, you're there, you might be loud at the restaurant, be quiet! We don't love you now! If you keep being loud, we don't love you! If they don't love me, I die. If they don't love me, I die. Something as simple as that, it feels like your life is at risk. No? Wow, right now I'm in danger and I could die. I could be abandoned and die. Not necessarily true, but you believe it is. That's a traumatic experience. Now, what are you going to do to cope with that? To deal with that, to survive? Let's take the part of me that is loud and let's get rid of that. If I have this thing that's threatening my survival, let's get rid of it, right? And we disown it. We suppress and repress. We create a split within, where there's the acceptable you that gets the praise, and there's all those unacceptable things about you that threaten your survival, and if you were to acknowledge them and re-own them and embrace them, you believe you will die. That's how it works. And as the years go on, we chop off more parts of ourselves and we create a bigger and bigger split. And the bigger the split, the lower your level of self-esteem. So if this is you, the entirety that is you, there's a split within, acceptable, unacceptable. Take that situation in the restaurant. Okay, being loud, not okay. I'm going to put it here. Let's just say, and I experienced this growing up, as a kid, you're young, and there's a rumor that you like someone in the school. Are kids nice and friendly about that? No. Julian and Susie sitting in the tree. Ha ha ha, he likes her. Now, limited perception of the world as a kid. What's the world to you? It's the classroom. You don't think beyond that. Your entire existence is home and classroom. What's going on with the classmates? Where do I stand? What's the hierarchy within the classroom? Do I fit in the classroom? The whole classroom laughing, ha ha, he likes Susie, ha 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 ha. Even though it's just laughter and just kids teasing, you might interpret it as, I'm no longer accepted in the classroom, which is the equivalent to you as an adult feeling like I no longer am accepted in the world. I'm ostracized from the world. This here is threatening my survival. If I'm ostracized, I'm done. If I don't fit in the classroom, I'm done. Survival at play, trauma. Let's take the part of me that shows interest in someone, and let's put that over here. And we put more and more over here. Could also put emotions. Maybe you grow up in a household and you're a little sad, and your parents say, hey, stop being so sad. Put a smile on that face. Oh, experiencing sadness threatens my survival here. Let's not. Let's disown that emotion. There's sadness. Or on the flip side, you could live in a household that's pretty miserable, and anytime you show a smile or enthusiasm, you get called out. What are you so happy about? Can't smile. So this is where it's also very unique to you, your environment, your culture, your upbringing, the values, the beliefs in your household, at school. And once more, we create the split. And the bigger the split, the more insecure, because there's less of you that is acceptable. This is also at the cause of you not feeling worthy. I don't feel good enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not whole. Well, yeah, because you're abandoning a part of you. Notice also the conditioning. I'm only loved when I'm good, aka I'm not loved when I'm everything that is me. I'm not good enough. Programmed in. And then just a little glimpse into the what now paradigm. We all have this. What's a what now, or what do they do? Okay, I got this split. Here's my solution. What now? I just need to focus on this and get more of this. More. And we compensate and we try to overblow the good part of us. Let's throw some approval at it, some success at it. Am I good enough now? Is this big enough that it makes up for this, that it compensates? It's also why it never works. Because it doesn't matter how much you're compensating, you're still compensating. And this is where desire and fear come into play. We desire more of this, but at the same time, we're then fearing that people will see through it, through the acceptable front, and see the inner darkness within. And that's most people's reality. Now, where do these things go? What are these things that you disowned? You can try thinking about it now, like, okay, why don't I feel good enough? maybe one reason will come up. But for the most part, these things are so far buried out of your awareness, you buried them, that consciously it can be close to impossible to identify them. Just sitting there trying to think about it, not going to work. So then it brings up the other question. Okay, well, first of all, where are these things and how can I identify them? Where are these things? They are buried in your subconscious. If you think of the mind, this is a gross simplification. You could think of it as there are two worlds inside of you. There's your conscious mind and your subconscious mind. Simply put, conscious is everything you're aware of right now. You're aware of me, you're listening to the words, you're aware of the content. Subconscious is everything you're not aware of. For example, breathing, body temperature, just basic things. It's all on autopilot. There's a lot of actions you do, even driving, that's on autopilot, subconscious. So this split here between the two, you could also roughly say that this is 10%, this is 90%. It's actually good. Past memories in your subconscious. What if you had to be aware of every memory, every situation that ever happened to you right here, right now? It's too much. So it's good that we have this split. But this is what we use to banish parts of ourselves. Because it's you can't get rid of it, it's you. What's the furthest place out of your awareness you can place it? In the depths of your subconscious. And then you put layers and layers of resistance around becoming aware of it. It will still bubble up though. If you sit home alone and do nothing, no distractions, it bubbles up. And then people stuff it back down, but it's there. And this is where all those unacceptable things are. Unacceptable thoughts, unacceptable emotions, unacceptable aspects. And when I say unacceptable, that's subjective to you. It's what you labeled as unacceptable due to that conditioning. Like I said, someone could have feeling sad is unacceptable. Someone could have feeling happy is unacceptable. So it's very unique. Unacceptable experiences, traumatic experiences, that's where you don't just disown a part of you, you disown the experience completely. You disconnect. That never happened. That's not me. But it did. So there's this big split. And the work here, and this is how you raise your level of self-esteem, it isn't by compensating, it's by dissolving the split. It's about being this and this. And it's not about flipping it either, because then you just create the same situation where it's like, okay, I'm going to embody this, screw this. No, it's be everything that is you, everything. And it's also don't destroy your ego, even though it's a catchy way of putting it. It's dissolve the ego. Okay? Even back to Buddhism, attachment, aversion. No attachment, no aversion. So the next challenge is identifying what's there. How can I re-own parts of me so I feel more whole and my self-esteem rises? Running the antivirus. And this is also where you bring in what I talked about, core beliefs, core identity, and trauma. So trauma's down there. What about the other two? First of all, what is a core belief? A core belief is a belief or an assumption, if you will, that you form early in life that serves as the foundation to other beliefs or assumptions. That's how our mind works. You figure something out and you're like, well, if this is true, then what else is true? And you build new assumptions based on previous assumptions. So, as a child, limited perception, come into the world, you're looking around, what's this thing called life? Now, some of the assumptions or beliefs, you're going to form them firsthand. You touch the stove, you burn your hand. Okay, it's hot. Don't touch stove. Funny enough, there's a core belief. But a lot of them, you're going to take them in secondhand. A lot of what you believe, you didn't actually learn yourself from trial and error. You learn by other people's trial and error, from other people. And a lot of what you might learn from other people, you might accept it as true even if it isn't. So a lot gets programmed in, but let's just say we take the example of relationships. You might look at your parents' relationships or lack of a relationship. And as a kid, you're like, okay, well, what's love? Look at my parents. And there are three sources you'll get a lot of core beliefs from. Parents or whoever is raising you, teachers, and classroom. Those are the three sources of authority in your life. Whoever's raising you, they have authority. What they say, I'm going to accept as true. Teachers, same thing. And classroom, same thing, because if the entire class believes something, there's a lot of social proof behind it, must be true. So audit those three. What perhaps did I start believing from them? Okay? But say you look at your parents and say they fight a lot in their relationship. Well, you're going to say, okay, I guess love is fighting. You're too young. You're not judging it. This is good or bad. You're like, that's love. And it forms a core belief. Love equals fighting. And then you build new beliefs on top of that, and new beliefs on top of that, and it's like this belief tree that grows. All based on the assumption love equals fighting. Now, core beliefs, we will also put them far out of our awareness into our subconscious. Why? Because becoming aware of these or questioning these is far too risky. It also threatens us. Because if it turns out that this isn't true, what happens to the belief tree? It crumbles. Then none of this is true. And you lose your bearings. You lose your map of the world. So we'd rather bury our head in the sand. So we place these core beliefs far out of our awareness. But there are ways to bring them into your awareness. One would be to look for recurring patterns in your life. Let's just say you have that assumption, love equals fighting. Chances are you might find yourself in a lot of relationships where there is a lot of fighting. And you might see relationships where there is no fighting, and you know logically, this is probably healthy, but you don't feel anything. This is boring. Crazy, huh? Maybe you look at your parents and they're divorced, they split up. Love equals separation, abandonment. And maybe now you're going for people who aren't fully available for you. People who cheat on you, people who leave you, long-distance relationships. The patterns follow. Relationships, my parents is just very platonic. And now you find yourself in very platonic relationships too, where you're more friends. And there's not that spark, there's not that chemistry. Different core beliefs could also be implanted when it comes to, say, money. Maybe you grew up in a household and your parents kept telling you, these greedy, filthy, rich people, they're scums. They're the evil on this world, the 1%. Ugh, they're corrupt. Okay, people who have money, not good. Well, then how's that going to affect you in your life? Are you going to allow yourself to make money? No, because you become one of them. I don't want the money to corrupt me. So we have core beliefs. You could write down, if you take health, wealth, relationships, write down a little equal next to it, and just try to fill in the blanks with whatever comes up. And try to fill in the blanks with the negative, not the positive. Someone might be like, or even success in general equals. What's the default we want to jump to? Success is freedom. It's great. It's everything I want. Okay, that's the right answer. What's the real answer? Success, perhaps scary. Success, a lot of responsibility. Success means being a responsible and productive person. Well, what if you believe you're not a responsible person? Are you going to allow yourself to get that success? No, you'll push it away. So those are core beliefs, and we have a lot of them. Figuring out our map and our bearings of the world. But then we also have core beliefs about ourselves, aka your core identity, who you consider yourself to be. Core beliefs is, what's this thing called life? What's the world? Core identity is, who am I in relation to the world? Where do I fit in the world? And this will also run you. For your core identity, a great exercise is to ask yourself, if you were to pick a fictional character, it could be from a movie, a TV show, a book, anything, a fictional character, if you had to pick one that described you or that encompassed the majority that is you, what character would you pick? Who are you? Not who you want to be, but a character that really just, that's me. And it doesn't have to be everything that is you, but the majority that is you. What would that character be? There was a client I coached many years ago, falls into the classic character of being the underdog. For example, the movie Rocky. right? You're facing all these challenges, no one believes in you, and you overcome it all. And that person actually lived in New York, working in Wall Street in finance. That was the identity we discovered he had. Now, the reason he signed up for coaching is because he recently got a big promotion. Big promotion where his boss moved him up and was ultimately preparing him to take over. So, hey, I'm moving you up in this position, I'm going to train you up, and you're going to take over. So, big pay increase, everything. And tons of potential if he crushed it with the bonuses, so on and so forth. And he found himself procrastinating like crazy, doing the bare minimum and even a little less than the bare minimum. And it reached a point where his boss actually came to him and said, hey, I don't know if I made the right decision picking you. Maybe I was wrong. So there was doubt. And he signed up for the coaching. But if you look at that pattern, notice how well it goes with the underdog. And we talked about this. And he's like, you're right. For him, he needs some big challenge to overcome. He needs people to doubt him. Him getting the job and just doing everything well, and the boss saying, great job, I was right, I knew it, you're great. Even having him sink into that perspective, he felt disgust. He did. Even though logically he's like, yeah, that's great, emotionally he just didn't resonate with it. Ugh. Versus, I'm going to slack off up until my boss says, I don't know about you, and then I can step it up and prove my boss wrong and win. Big challenge. So even success without the big challenge wasn't success. And can you perhaps tell how that might cause a lot of self-sabotage in your life, making things a lot harder than they need be? A lot of people do this too, and it's a sneaky one where, say this is you, a lot of the progress we think we make isn't actually progress, it's fixing mistakes we made. Where, okay, I'm going to succeed, self-sabotage. Build back up, self-sabotage. Build back up, self-sabotage. So every time you're building up, it feels like you're improving, but you're staying under the exact same ceiling. Sneaky one. Convinces you that you're moving up, but you're not. So that's one example, being the underdog. Another one could be goodwill hunting. Someone with such potential, but that never actually goes for it. A lot of people resonate with that. Another one could be Spider-Man, waiting for a magical moment where a spider bites you, waiting for that magical moment where everything changes. You could also be, and a lot of entrepreneurs fall into this, the hero, but the hero who sacrifices everything for the cause. I'm building this in my business, and I'm working, and I will sacrifice happiness and relationships and friendships, everything for the work. And there's a certain significance that you find in it. In a way, like the glory of like, look, I'm just taking the sacrifice for the greater good. You could also be the victim. You could also be the sidekick. I know someone like this where all his friends are always moving up and he's helping his friends, but never him. He's just the sidekick, the number two to all these people pursuing their dreams, but he never pursued his. You could also be the person, if you take a movie, who's in the background, a background character no one notices. Who are you? For myself, I was the self-destructive artist. That's what ran me. Self-destructive, not in the way where I would just self-destruct at the bottom. I needed to build something and then destroy it for no reason at all. Meaning I had to reach a point where I could succeed if I wanted to. I was right there, like I'm right at the finish line, and instead of crossing it, I'm like, meh. Now, why did I do that? And why do we hang on to these different core identities? To find significance, because it makes me special. And special isn't necessarily pleasing. You're like, how does being a victim make me feel special? It does. Doesn't mean it's pleasing, doesn't mean it's fun, but it makes you feel significant. In my reality, I always thought, well, then just crossing the finish line is what everyone else would do. But I'm going to show them how different I am and not cross it for no reason at all. And I would never truly allow myself to succeed, because then I'm no longer self-destructive. Get it? So all of this is buried, and then it explains why the guards are there. And it also explains why if you think of self-sabotage, it's not you screwing yourself over. It's actually you giving yourself what you want. Let this land. Everything you hate about yourself and your life right now, Go over the list. All the things you're just like, why? Realize that a part of you, most likely out of your awareness, loves it. The pain in your life, a part of you loves it. The procrastination in your life, a part of you loves it. Everything you hate about you, a part of you loves it. Or you would have done something about it. And that's self-sabotage. It's you giving yourself exactly what you want, but you're not aware of the part of you that wanted it. And you realize here that there's often a rift between the conscious and the subconscious. Consciously, I want to go in this direction, but if it goes against a core belief, your core identity, or you have to embody something that you disowned, you're pulled in two different directions. And what's in the subconscious is much more powerful. It always wins. I want to succeed, but I'm the self-destructive artist. Get it? I want to be successful, but success is responsibility, and I'm not responsible. Tug of war. That's that force. That's the thing pulling you away. Hey, I want to put myself out there, but to do so, I have to be loud. But I disown the part of me that's loud. Pulled. Come right back. So anytime you mess up or you self-sabotage, a good practice is, what is this keeping me aligned with? Why is the opposite scary? And this is also where what I call shadow questions can be very valuable. If you think of a shadow question, and you could also view this, conscious, subconscious as your shadow, if you're familiar with the work of Carl Jung. Well, what's down here, all these core beliefs, my core identity, so on and so forth, under layers of resistance, if it's very hard to be aware of, well, when you self-sabotage, asking yourself a shadow question can send some valuable data up, even on your own, trying to introspect. What's a shadow question? You could think of it as a probe that you send down that passes these layers of resistance and that can shoot up some valuable information. One example of a shadow question is, why are you not good enough? Now, what's the reflex when you hear this? It's like, why are you not good enough?
I am good enough.
Exactly. You're like, I am. What are you talking about? Even from a mainstream perspective, you're like, what kind of sick, dark, negative question is that? Now, here's the thing with shadow questions. Don't analyze and focus on the validity of the question. Meaning, all of you are good enough. But does perhaps down here, the virus, does a part of you perhaps believe you aren't? So think of shadow questions as you're communicating with the virus. And to communicate with the virus, you have to speak the language of the virus. Make sense? So why are you not good enough? Asking that to you doesn't mean you aren't good enough. But it's sending this question down and seeing, does a part of me answer back? So I like this practice, like even at home, just sitting down 5 minutes, okay, why am I not good enough? And actually asking it to you. And resist, I am. And resist saying, I don't know, because that's also resistance. It blocks you from diving deep. Just stay open and wait. And maybe a reason will come up. You're not good enough because you did this when you were 5. Take note. Whatever information comes up is gold. You're learning about the virus. The more you learn about it, the more you get to know it, the more you can let go of it. But then also notice, say we take that example. You did something when you were 5. Let's just say you feel guilty about it still, subconsciously. So maybe not even consciously. You're like, hey, I'm totally good now. But a part of you still feels guilty for a mistake you made when you were 5 years old. Well, then are you going to allow yourself to succeed and receive good things in life and happiness? No, because then you wouldn't be getting the punishment you deserve. So it goes deep. One other nuance with self-sabotage, when I say this, you always give yourself exactly what you want. Sometimes people are like, well, sometimes I do something I know I don't want. Like say smoking a cigarette. I know I don't want to smoke it. I know it's not healthy for me, but I'm doing it. Sometimes you will choose something that you know is not good for you to avoid something worse. That's the other key. If you gave me the option, cut your hand off or cut your arm off, I'd pick the hand. That might be smoking. Smoking's the hand, but not smoking is feeling all the stress and cocktail of negative emotions. I'd rather smoke. Get it? So that'll also happen. Now, shadow questions. Why am I not good enough? Why don't I deserve success? In a way, it's playing the devil's advocate. Why is success not for me? Why do I deserve to be punished? Why am I unlovable? Why will no one ever love me or accept me? So on and so forth. What am I hiding? Why is success scary? Why are good things scary? Why does life have to be hard for me? There's a million of these you can come up with. But you get the type of thinking. It's communicating once more with the virus. And whatever it says, take note, take note, take note, because that's what you can let go of. So to recap so far, core identity, write down the character, and then look at the pros and cons of being that character, and see if you can perhaps link it to patterns in your life. Look at recurring patterns in your life. What core beliefs might those be associated with? And ask yourself shadow questions. Okay? Now, one tool you can combine with shadow questions to go even deeper on them is to follow what I call the trail of whys. And this is where you simply ask yourself, why? And it allows you to go deeper on it. And you can apply the trail of whys to many situations. So say you're like, why am I not good enough? And you have a reason. If you then follow up with why, you go deeper. If you even take a simple thing like a fear, I'm scared to put myself out there. Like if you're scared to say, come up here on stage, I'm like, come on up and sing. I'm scared. Why? Well, if I sing and I don't do it well, people might judge me. Why is that scary? Well, if people judge me, they might reject me. Why is rejection scary? Well, if they reject me, I'm alone. And you got deeper. Or if they reject me, I'm not good enough. If they reject me, it means something's wrong with me. So following the trail of whys is very, very valuable. And it links to something, you've probably heard this example before, many people talk about it, but it links to files versus folders. So say we take situations in your life that scare you. Putting myself out there, following my dream, speaking up, asserting a boundary, singing, so on and so forth. There's many situations. Talking to my boss. What people do when it comes to trying to process all this is they try to focus on every situation one by one, even with letting go. Okay, I'm going to process this, then this, then this, then this. And you can take that approach if you like, but it's not the optimal one. These are all the files. Following the trail of whys allows you to identify the folder that all these files are in. So say we take that example, fear of rejection, and you trace it back to fear of being alone, well, then that's a folder. And if you take the folder, fear of being alone, then all the files, all the situations in your life that are run by the fear of being alone get handled. Does that make sense? So I can either process all these situations one by one, or I can just process the fear of being alone, and they get taken care of. So try to always go deeper. And the trail of whys is a great way to get to the folders. And here's the other thing. There are folders upon folders upon folders upon folders with the trail of whys. So it's also okay, and don't get all paranoid. Did I get to the final why? The only point is to dive a little deeper to then let go. Okay? But this is what runs us. With trauma, another example I like to give, and this is talked about in a book called Waking the Tiger by Peter Levine. Highly recommend reading it. I like his take too, because it goes a little differently than the classic spiritual take around trauma. And he studies it a lot in animals or people with PTSD, came back from war, so on and so forth. It's a much more grounded view. Both complement each other greatly. But one example he gives is, if you look at an animal, let's just say a deer getting attacked by a bear. The bear's coming up, and say the deer is just cornered in. Can't run away, can't do anything. That there, you could view it as a traumatic experience. Ultimately, a situation where you just can't deal, it's too overwhelming. That's trauma. Right? It's like just too much. The experience itself threatens your existence. Even acknowledging the experience can threaten your existence. So in situations like that, we either resort to fight or flight. But say you're that deer and you can't fight back and you can't run away. What's the third option? Freeze. Yeah. There's nothing you can do. Like, even think of yourself as a human. Say you're walking home in New York and you get cornered by someone who's robbing you and they want to kill you with a knife and they're going to kill you. And you're cornered in and you can't fight back. Your hands are tied for some reason and the knife's coming up. And you know it's coming and you know this is it. Are you going to be fully present with it? Are you going to be like, let's watch it go into my guts? Or are you going to try to disconnect from what's going on completely? Which one? Yeah, disconnect. That's what the animals do. Say you take that deer, the bear's coming in, it's just going to freeze, and ultimately it disconnects to such a point where it just collapses and ultimately plays dead. If that's all you can do, maybe you can just pray, like, maybe if it thinks I'm dead, it'll leave me alone. But even if it doesn't, while it's ripping you to parts, you are disconnected even from the feeling of pain. Now, in a way, it's quite comforting knowing that, say you were to get brutally killed, you'd actually be completely dissociated, or at least to some extent, from that pain. But that's what happens. You freeze and you dissociate, which is also why a lot of people who have survived extreme violence or abuse sometimes even recall the situation viewing it from the ceiling or another perspective. They've disconnected to that point. This is not me. This is not happening. Disown, suppress, repress, banish. And that experience goes into that split that we talked about before. Now, say the bear walks away. What does the deer do? Gets back up, and although it was just lying there still, it's tense. The nervous system's just going nuts. It's like, so it gets up, and you'll see it shake and discharge all that pent-up energy, and then go on with its day. What we do as humans is we experience similar things, not necessarily a bear, but similar situations that put us in that free state. However, unlike the deer, who then gets up and shakes it off, what do? We get up and we go on with our day. I'm fine. Another thing happens. I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine. And here you are. All this accumulated, pent-up energy. A big reservoir inside of you. We all have it, different reservoirs. There's this building up over the years that just run us. And it's also why I always joke, the greatest song of all time is Shake It Off by Taylor Swift. You just gotta discharge it. But this is also where letting go comes into play, is discharging that. Now, with trauma in that situation there, and this is another way to identify what is running you, you can look for when you get triggered. Meaning, say that deer, without discharging the energy, encounters another bear, just the thought of a bear. Maybe that deer is out having a beer with another deer, and the deer mentions bear in the conversation. How do you think that deer who just saw the bear is going to feel? Triggered. And that's what happens within us. Say you were to disown that part of you that is loud and expressive, and now you're put in a situation where you have to be loud and expressive. It's going to recall the original trauma, and it's going to take over to some extent. That's getting triggered. It's when something inside of you is getting poked at and activated. Something from your past, something you disowned. And the reason it's so triggering, and you even feel in that moment your survival instinct kind of kick in, is because if we take that model there, something that was down here start bubbling up to the surface. And the closer it's getting to your awareness, the scarier it gets, because you believe that becoming aware and reowning it will kill you. Because that's what was conditioned to you early on. And that fear has been compounding and just throughout the years. Now, getting triggered, people try to avoid this. Most people even design their lives to avoid ever getting triggered. But there is value in getting triggered. What's the value? You can identify some of the things that run you. So notice, you can use the shadow questions, the trail of whys, but you can also use when you get triggered. A good audit to see when you get triggered is the simple question, is my response appropriate to reality? If you come up on stage and you're trembling and so scared like you're about to die, that response is not appropriate to reality. You're getting triggered. It means the way you're experiencing has nothing to do with the current environment, but it has to do with what the current environment is activating inside of you. The same with a breakup. Are breakups fun? No. Someone's like, weird you had to think about that. Well, I don't know. No. And there's a grieving period where you have to get over it and process and heal. But it's not something that should run you for years and years to come. You see people still triggered by a breakup 5, 10, 20, 30 years later. Sometimes even remarried. Just the mention of that partner triggers them. Well, then you're getting triggered. Eckhart Tolle calls this having a pain body attack. You might also have it when you get extremely mad. You find out about something and you just go out, blow off the handle. Well, your response was not appropriate to reality. You're getting triggered. And more often than not, the real response and the triggered response are combined. Meaning, say there's that thing that got you a little, like that got you really angry. Maybe there's some validity in it. But the appropriate response is this much anger, and you experience this much anger. And when you let go, what you're letting go of is the triggered response, the unrealistic response, and you're left with what's real. The same with, say, coming up here on stage. Maybe it's not the most comfortable environment. Maybe you'll feel more comfortable alone in your room, sure. But it shouldn't trigger you to the point where you're just completely stifled and freezing. So auditing in your life situations where you get triggered can point to this. And here's the cool thing. When you are actually triggered, it's one of the best times to let go. And we'll talk about letting go. Why? Because what was down here is now closer to your awareness. And it's easier to catch up here than down here. So whenever you're the most triggered, it's the best time to do a release. But it's also the time where you will not want to do a release. There are 3 stages that happen. People at the bottom, they get triggered and they don't even realize they're triggered. And then they just act on it. And you'll usually tell you acted on getting triggered when you feel a little guilty after and when it feels like something took over. Same with that getting angry example. You probably all had it. You just like blow off the handle, and then after that, like, oh, I kind of overreacted. Or maybe you start mass texting people like, you stupid, like going off, and you're like, I was a little extreme. What did I do? Right? Oh, I wish I could take that one back. It was the spur of the moment. So you have a bit of that feeling. And once more, when you're triggered, it's the feeling that takes over you. It's the feeling, those sensations that are in control. Versus when you're actually experiencing your emotions, right, your emotional guidance system, you feel it, but you're still in control. So a good audit is, again, once more, is this appropriate to reality? Am I in control, or is it in control? Now, with the people at the bottom who don't realize, who just act on it, it's quite scary to also think about, because that means that the majority of their actions, because they're not aware they're getting triggered, aren't actually proactive. They are purely reactive. Do they have a plan then for their own life? Do they have even a conscious will if it's just the triggered energy? Are they even there, or is it that energy that's taken over? Kind of creepy. You've all heard that famous saying, if you don't have a plan for yourself, someone else has a plan for you. And we always think, oh, it's the government, it's this. No, it's past trauma. It has a plan for you, and it's not a good one. So that's most people. As you move up, you start catching when you're triggered. But a level 2 person notices when they're triggered, but they still succumb to it. Because it's hard. You're triggered, again, that energy's fighting to hijack and take over. And it's just easy to give in. It's hard to put your foot down on that. And a lot of people are there. Even people who hit level 3 kind of oscillate for a while between the two, and that's okay. Don't self-attack. It's a phase you go through, but at least now you're aware of it. It all starts with awareness. Then level 3 is you get triggered and you're able to put your foot down, not engage, not feed it, not fuel it, and instead let go of it. And a couple other subtleties. When you're triggered, there tends to be a fixation with who or what triggered you, as opposed to what is getting triggered within. Don't get sucked into the who or what. Like, say you said something that triggers me. I'm like, oh, it's easy for me to be like, it's that guy, how dare you, and just start looping on you. And even at, like when I leave after this, I'm like, oh, that guy, how dare he, I'm just looping on him. But then I'm missing the value, which is, wait a minute, why is it that something he said activated something in me? What got activated? That's the gold. Okay, there's another great book called The Presence Process, Michael Brown. And in that book, I'm paraphrasing, there's a quote that says, don't focus on the messenger, look for the message. Technically, if he said something that triggered me, I should be thanking him, because it allows me to look for the message and find the gold within. Also, if you want to for sure get triggered, the easiest way is go hang out with your family for a bit. For real. Right? We call it the holidays. It should be like Trigger Fest days. You go there and there's all the memes, right? It's like, just 1 hour with my family. It's like Ben Affleck with the cigarette. It's like, that's why. It's like, boom, boom, it's activating a lot. But then what people do is they focus, you said this, you said that, versus, wait a minute, what's getting poked at? There's gold there. Thank you. Right? Become a trigger chaser and thank the messengers, including situations. Thank the messengers. Focus on the message. Don't get sucked out there. Look in here. And the other thing is, when you're triggered, you're going to feel your attention getting pulled up to thinking as opposed to feeling. Say you're like, oh, really angry. It's like, come up into your mind, hijacks your mind and gets you to think of more things that fuel it. You need to feed the trigger energy. So say you did something that made me mad, that energy is going to take over. I'm going to focus on you, oh, this guy, and then it's going to bring my awareness up here, and it's going to say, hey, think of everyone else that ever made you mad. Oh, and there's that guy, and that person, and this person, and blah, 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 and it fuels, and the more it fuels, the more it hijacks, the more I look for, and there's a self-fulfilling prophecy that happens. You got to put your foot down on it, look for the message, and bring your awareness into the body, into feeling, not thinking. Thinking fuels it, feeling heals it. Bring it into the body. But understanding this too, look for when you're triggered. But if you want to take it one step further, you could also technically, proactively trigger yourself. Right? And this is something I also teach my clients. The formula goes, action, trigger, release, repeat. Action, trigger, release, repeat. You do an action that triggers you. Say it's social anxiety. I'm scared to say hi to this person. I'm going to do it. Hi. Triggers. Then you release, let go, and you repeat. Action, trigger, release, repeat. Back to the invisible prison. There's you. There's the prison. It's take an action outside of your comfort zone that triggers this in the guards, and instead of fighting them, let go. That's the approach. This also means allowing yourself to truly feel it, which is also why progressive desensitization, although yes, it works to some extent, takes you further away from the goal. Keep this in mind, especially for those of you who have anxiety or social anxiety. We tend to try to progressively desensitize ourselves, but in a way that's you numbing yourself to the trigger. You're triggered, you're anxious, and you try to numb and just plow through anyway. I always compare it to the movie Fight Club, where there's that scene where he goes into his mind and like there's the penguins in the ice. It's like going to his happy place. That's what we do. I'm anxious, but I'm going to go to my happy place. And you numb, and you numb. And the more you desensitize, the more you numb. Now, sure, you can now perhaps deal better than if it was there, but it's a temporary Band-Aid. To release it, you have to feel it. So if you've been numbing yourself for a while, you're going to have to actually learn how to remove all the numbness and let that back up. It can actually be helpful to, next time if you want to trigger yourself, like, okay, action, trigger, release, repeat. I'm anxious, resist the reflex to go to your happy place. Ask yourself, how would old me, before all the desensitization, feel this? And let that take over, and then let go. That'll get you ahead. It's not desensitization, it's resensitization. So this is really, you could say, the second part of this. Part one is the computer, the two paradigms. Part two is what's running us, how to identify it. Part three, once you're aware of this, is how to let go of it. And there are 3 steps to letting go. The first is become aware of what you want to let go of. On the macro, this means become aware of what's out of your awareness, buried in your subconscious. That's step one. If you're not aware of that, good luck. On the micro, and I'll talk about this when it comes to a letting go meditation, it's become aware of the sensations. Step two is allow yourself to experience it fully. And step three is let it come up and let it out. Those are the 3 steps. And this is done through mindfulness-based meditation. Another key distinction. There's concentration-based meditation and mindfulness-based meditation. Yes, mindfulness, you are still concentrating, but the intention is very different. Concentration-based meditation is the type of meditation you've probably heard of in the mainstream. It's sit down and focus, concentrate on the present moment. Concentrate on a mantra. Concentrate on a spot on the wall. Do that for 20 minutes. Now, there's definitely advantages and benefits to doing this. I've done it a bit in the past. It's great. It's definitely better than nothing. But what I found is that it produces some results, but it's not quite the results you're after, and the results are temporary, not permanent. Where for a lot of people, these more mainstream concentration-based meditations turn into temporary escapes from their problems. Where say right now, I'm like, everyone, concentrate on my hand. Focus on my hand, focus on the hand, and just only look here. While you are looking here, are you still as aware of your surroundings as before? Keep looking. No, they kind of fade, right? They get a little blurry and fade, and the longer you focus on this, all you're seeing is this. That's what these meditations tend to turn into. I'm going to focus on the now. I'm going to focus on a spot on the wall. And you have all your problems here in your surroundings. You suck, that little voice. You're like, focus, focus, focus. The more you focus, the more it drowns them out. But as soon as you stop focusing, they're back. So it's like these little vacations. That's concentration-based. Mindfulness-based is the opposite. Instead of focusing on something to avoid this or forget about this or drown it out, we're going to focus on this. Don't focus on the now. Focus on the problems that are pulling you away from the now. If you think of that approach even, be present, focus on the now. You're chasing presence. It's the direct approach. Be present to run away from this. As opposed to, let's focus on this and let go of it, so there's no longer anything pulling me away from presence. Why am I not present from default? Why do I need to do so? Why do I need to make myself be present? Only someone who has things that are pulling them away from it need to fight that and focus and use hustle and discipline to be present. So mindfulness is focus on all the negative and then let go of it. And then you're not chasing presence, you're realizing presence. And it seeps in more and more into your life by default, without effort. Another key saying, ego equals effort, by the way. So the way it works here is you must become aware of what you want to let go of. Now, during mindfulness-based meditation, the way that you let go is that you don't want to engage the mind. We talked about before, not thinking, feeling. So when it comes to what you want to focus on during the meditation, you want to focus on different sensations. Not thoughts, because you're engaging the mind, and thoughts are self-reinforcing, you'll think of similar ones. Not emotions, sensations. Difference between an emotion and a sensation is that sensations are what come before the label that is the emotion. Meaning, if you take fear, what is it? It's this vague thing, right? What's fear? I'm just fear. Sensations are what signal you're afraid. So perhaps you start shaking. You start breathing a little, like shallow breaths. Oh, I'm trembling. Oh, I'm starting to sweat. I'm getting pale. Those are physical sensations you can precisely locate in the body. When those happen, your mind's like, based upon this, fear, label. So sensations, remember, you can locate them in the body. That's what you focus on so you don't engage the mind and you feel. Step 2 is allow yourself to experience it fully. Sounds simple, just feel it. Technically, that's letting go, it's just feel. You're not letting go meaning getting rid of, and this is a key distinction. You're not getting rid of. you're, back to the circle, dissolving the split. So what are you letting go of? You're letting go of the attachment to only being this part or version of you, and your resistance to being the unacceptable. So in a way, letting go is being everything that is you. It is accepting, it is embracing. It is moving towards what you're feeling, not away from what you're feeling. That's the good audit to know if you are doing it right or doing it wrong. Are you trying to move away from? Trying to get rid of is moving away from it. You're labeling it as bad. By labeling it as bad, you're still resisting it, and whatever you resist persists. If you think of the more toxic ways that we try to go with dealing with this, one is expressing it. Oh, I don't feel good. Blah, blah, blah. We just yell it out at people. Doesn't work. Number two is we try to escape it, distract ourselves. Oh, let's talk to some people. Let's put some music, some TV, social media. And number three is we try to numb it. Food, alcohol, cigarettes, drugs. But all those approaches, the intention is to move away from what you're feeling. So it never gets to the cause. Letting go is actually no attachment, no aversion, feel and be. And this is where you realize that everything in this circle wants to leave. It's only down there because a part of you is still stuffing it there. So letting go, it's not a doing act. There's no action involved. It's not, I'm stuffing it down, how do I get rid of it? It's stop stuffing it down. You have to stop doing. And you have to realize that by default, you are doing right now. There's that attachment, that aversion out of your awareness. You're doing, and you have to stop doing. So allowing yourself to experience it fully means not analyzing it, not judging it, not trying to get rid of it, not trying to make sense of it, simply being with it and feeling it. And then lastly, let it come up and let it out. And this is something that happens on its own. As you experience it, the charge around it starts dissipating. But for it to dissipate, you can't be attached in resistance. You have to stay in this space of openness and feeling. And when it dissipates, it's gone. And then all the associated thoughts and actions from it fade away, and you are free. In terms of the meditation that I do for this, there are some tools that I use. One is I only do guided meditations. Even myself, I listen to my own guided meditations. Why is that? Because I don't want to engage the mind. I don't want to think. I can't guide my way through it. So I want to surrender the thinking and only feel. What's another reason I do guided meditations? Because I want to go deeper. A big belief is that people can just let go by breathing in the moment. But just like we talked about before with shadow questions, following the trail of whys, you've got to go deeper. Letting go is about quality, not quantity. People are like, what if I do 3 meditations, letting go for 6 months straight every day? No, because that's quantity. It doesn't work that way. It's about the quality, and the quality means identifying sensations that are linked to deeply buried things. So you got to first identify the deeply buried things with some of the tools that I shared here, then the sensations. But to go even deeper on that during the meditation, if you do a guided meditation where I'm asking you and guiding you through it various questions that hit on that and go even deeper into it, you can access more. This is why it's so powerful. And I listen once more to my own meditations. So I surrender the thinking mind, and my whole mantra during the meditation is, what are the associated sensations? That's what I keep asking myself. Because you might hear a question and you think of something. Oh, think about your relationship situation. You're thinking of it. Then, on your end, what are the sensations associated to this? Then feel. What about your fears? Sensations. So keep bringing it back to the sensations. I also, to allow you to identify sensations, during the meditation in the beginning, have people bring their awareness to, in the spiritual world, it's known as your root chakra, the base of your spine. The only reason we do this is to simply get out of the head and get more in touch with the body, because most people live up here. So by bringing your awareness here, you start tapping into feeling more, not thinking. Very similar to yoga, right? Breathing from the base of your spine, like in yoga, it's breathe into your leg. And you're like, how? So it's a lot of intention and focus. You breathe there and then you feel. And then you go through it, and there's different breathing cycles. But the approach here with every breath is once more moving towards what you're feeling. So the way I like to view it is ground myself in the body. I'm guided through it. I feel the sensations. And with whatever I feel when I do the breathing cycles, on the inhale, I view it as me opening myself up to the sensations, letting them take over. And on the exhale, it's not me pushing them out. It's not me getting rid of them, because then you're still resisting them. It's me surrendering even more. Like, shh. The same way you would if you're swimming in a pool, and say you want to gracefully relax and push yourself underwater and sink to the bottom. How would you do that? You would kind of let go and just go like, shh, and just blow all the air out and sink in. The same with what you're feeling. It's shh, surrender and move towards. Okay? And by doing so, the change is crazy. And a good external practice you can do to help with this is the cold shower. Taking a cold shower, but relaxing into the cold. Because all those things that we talked about down here, getting poked at, coming into your awareness, your reflex is to stuff them right back down. It's not to feel them, it's to resist them. That's why feeling can be very difficult. It's simple, but it's difficult. Not easy to do. So if you take the cold, you'll notice, you go into a cold shower, when it hits your skin, what's your reflex? Tense, right? You're resisting. So you need to challenge yourself with the sensations of cold that aren't necessarily pleasant, sensations that trigger resistance. Can I relax? And you might see a back and forth. And then, that's good practice, because that's what's going to happen during the releases. Things get poked at. It triggered something inside of me. And you're going to have the same feeling as the shower. And you're like, no, stay open. Stay open. Feel, feel, feel. And the more you release this charge, the more it deactivates that prison, the more you actually have free will, the more you have control over your life, the more you enjoy the results, the less self-sabotage there is, and ultimately, the better the quality of your life. That's the way. And with the triggered sensations too, you can audit past memories or people, and this is a good test to see how controlled you are. It's who is pulling your strings emotionally. We talked about before, family, that's one. Why is it that on holidays you go back home to your family and everyone gets triggered? Well, you all are pulling each other's strings. There's some links there. You might think back to perhaps an experience during your childhood or teenage years, and just thinking about the experience rushes you with feeling. Oh, that was like that. Well, then that experience, there's a string, there's a link. It's pulling your strings. If one person gives you a piece of news and another one gives you the same news, if with one you're like, oh, okay, that sucks, and the other ones you flip out on them, well, then they triggered you. They're pulling your strings. Whoever and whatever is triggering you is pulling your strings. And with letting go, you'll realize those situations, those memories, those people, you release the charge around them, and it just turns into information, data. And there's no longer the charge and the triggering effect. It's the same as if I asked all of you, what did you eat for breakfast? Does recalling what you ate for breakfast trigger you? Cereal. No, it's just information. And that's how you transform those past experiences and free yourself. Now, a couple final things here. A question that I often get is, well, how do I know if I've let go? And what I always say is, one, what I just mentioned, things that used to trigger you cease to trigger you. They trigger you less. Two, look for signs of relief. Relief, though, doesn't mean feeling happy. So you could, for example, do a meditation and you come out of it and you're just really sad or really angry even. But in that sadness and anger, there's a certain relief where it might have been sadness or anger that you disowned. And now you're finally allowing yourself to experience what you didn't allow yourself to experience previously. And by allowing yourself to experience even that sadness, sure, you're sad, but now there's this, I can feel and be more of me. So look for relief there. Also audit, moving towards, not away from. Then the other question is, well, when will I have let go completely? And the answer is when you stop asking the question. Now, that's a famous answer, but it's an accurate one. Why? Because this question, when will I let go completely, what's motivating it? Remember, not what now, when will I let go completely? What now? What's the answer? Why? Where did this question even come from? The question comes from you not being okay with yourself right now. If you were okay with yourself right now, you wouldn't be concerned about when you will be okay. So here's the thing. You don't feel okay, so the question is, when will I be okay? It's a great answer when you stop asking the question, because when you feel okay, that question will cease to appear. So the more you actually let go, the more you feel okay being you. The more you take, like you dissolve that split and you are you. And there's less of this force that's saying, you got to be different, you got to be better, you got to be healed. And it shifts to, I just have to be me. And literally you'll see that question just fade away. And you don't even have to make yourself not think it. It just doesn't pop in your mind. There are many things that don't pop in your mind. You don't have to make yourself not think it. So that's why that's the answer. But also realize you'll never reach perfection with this, and it's also not the goal. Like, none of you are here because you want to let go of everything 100%. You're here because you want to, once more, back to the beginning, enhance the quality of your life. And you don't have to let go of everything to enhance the quality of your life. And what I've noticed, though, two shifts in the more advanced, is that there's one, you could say, for most people, the majority of the time it's miserable, and they have exceptional moments where they feel peaceful. With this work, you don't let go of everything, but what happens is you shift that. Or for the most part, you feel fulfilled, great, and peaceful, and then you have exceptional moments where you still get triggered. But you're still going to get triggered, and life's going to keep throwing things at you. Life's going to keep lifing. I still get triggered, so on and so forth. But versus before was the majority of the time, now it's a lot less. So that happens. And then secondly, the biggest shift is that doing this type of work, letting go, doing the releases, ceases to be this chore, this thing that you do with a certain outcome in mind. I'm letting go to accomplish this, do this, feel this. And it starts being this moment that you look forward to, where you're just being there with you, honoring you, and feeling you. When the releases cease to be a chore and turn into, some time to just be with me, that's a big shift when it comes to being more, quote unquote, advanced letting go. Now, the final model that goes with this, we talked about acceptable, unacceptable. We talked about files versus folders. To break all this down, we also talked about core beliefs, your core identity, past trauma. But another map that really chips away at this, and this is what I take my mentoring clients through, are the different levels, the 8 levels of transformation. You might have already heard me talk about this, but you can break down this entire part as, at the bottom, apathy, grief, fear, anger, courage, desire, purpose, love. And that's ultimately how I formed this coaching, by the way. I started coaching and shifting my teachings to this end of 2014, early 2015. Released Transformation Mastery, which was the foundation of a lot of this, early 2017. And since then took a ton of one-on-one clients on, as well as live events. But the biggest thing with the one-on-one clients, and I would do so many, is I'd see the behind the scenes of so many people, and I would see the folders. I'd see the patterns. It were different situations, so on and so forth, but something like, all these people here, a big chunk have this fear that runs them. Oh, they have this thing that runs them. And the biggest folders that run all of us are these 8 levels. So when I take my clients through this, it's 8 weeks where you focus on one at a time. It's putting you in situations that trigger you for each level. So you see what's running you down there. Let's see if there's some apathy in the things you disown. Let's see if there's some grief, some fear, some anger, some courage, some desire, some purpose, some love. So you get tools, mindsets, introspections. You get shadow questions. You get exercises to execute on that trigger you. And then you get specific meditations that focus on the theme. There's an apathy meditation, a grief meditation, a fear meditation. And those are the only ones that I personally do myself, those 8 meditations. And they're more of like these surgically focused meditations. And the more you chip away at all this, the more you dissolve the split. So this is how all these models come together, and overall, this is the whole philosophy of why letting go is the way.